Welcome to Thriller Bitcoin. Welcome to Thriller Bitcoin.
Baby, don't tell me it's only in my eyes, 'cause I'll hide, fall back on nothing to see.
Tell us about Open Dialogue.
So Open Dialogue Foundation, initiated by me back in 2009, it's a human rights organization. We defend political prisoners, those who are politically persecuted, all critics of regimes in many authoritarian regimes. And of course, it's going to be not only journalists, activists, as usually people can imagine, but also entrepreneurs, for example, those who refuse to cut off internet during peaceful protest on the demand of regimes, or those who didn't want to participate in corruption schemes. So we have very diverse portfolio of former political prisoners whom we have, whom we helped to be released over the last 15 years. And we became quite dangerous because of our successful human rights work for a number of authoritarian regimes. And until last year, I and Open Dialogue Foundation were considered and classified as a threat to national security by at least 3 authoritarian regimes. And it was a result because we were a very effective organization. And also because of this, we were unfortunately under huge smear campaign, different kind of legal attacks, and we were deprived the right to have financial services. So being in Belgium, in Europe, operating globally and defending human rights globally, we were cut off from financial services, basically financially excluded for politically motivated reasons for our human rights work. And this is the reason why we started to use Bitcoin, not only to resist against repressions, but also to teach our network of activists in Central Asian countries like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, many others, how to use Bitcoin for human rights. We also used Bitcoin to collect and to provide humanitarian aid for Ukraine since first Russian full invasion to Ukraine. And we provided aid for an amount over 8 million of euros, basically for the last 2 years. So the reason why we using Bitcoin and also why we educating regulators how we use Bitcoin, we believe that financial instruments, financial freedoms, they has to be neutral and they has to be accessible for everyone. Otherwise, it's so easy to manipulate and basically deprive the rights, like almost for your life, everyone. So this is in a nutshell. And right now we have 2 priorities. First of all, we defend peer-to-peer transactions and basically privacy payment and crowdfunding instrument and developers who are developing it. And the second, we promote and we defend in front of G7 regulators Bitcoin mining and miners, because we believe if mining is going to be weaponized and criminalized, or labeled as something negative, it will impact both entire network, but also end users, those who benefit from Bitcoin as a financial freedom tool.
Wow. That sounds equally terrifying at the same time, as well as pretty well explained. Can you talk about just kind of the dictatorships that you've seen around your part of the world, and more or less how that directly impacts people in your organization?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, you need to know that my organization was established because I was dreaming as an activist from Ukraine to have a network and to support people who actually fight for their freedoms domestically. Because right now you see a lot of movements against immigrants, refugees, and so on. But if you just help people who actually defending their human rights on the ground, you would not need all of this massive immigration or refugees or any kind of aid supply for people living abroad. You will be just getting things done domestically. So for this purpose, and because I used to be also activist who participated in Orange Revolution, Euromaidan Revolution in Ukraine, I'm originally from Ukraine, so I know perfectly how it's important to support people locally. And what kind of activists or what kind of repressions we talking about? First of all, it's peaceful protesters. It's people who want to live a normal life with a clear rule of law and clear respect of human rights. And what kind of repression they face? They can be tortured, they can be kidnapped, they have family members and them that can be killed. And what role of Open Dialogue Foundation in this situation? First of all, we collect information about this kind of human rights violation, torture cases, and we make them as a condition for trade agreements or for policy, any kind of policy between G7 countries and those dictatorships. For example, in Ukraine, during Euromaidan, there was hundreds of politically repressed people. Basically, they were taken hostages. They were kept injured in hospitals or in detention facilities. We organized missions from members of European Parliament, national parliaments in EU, and we make them observe these basically trials. We help them to enter these detention facilities and house arrest or hospital arrest. And this saved life people, not only the capital of Ukraine, but all over the country in different regions. And this helped to protect these people from being killed, sentenced for many years for nothing. Because the only reason why they were sentenced or injured and get as a hostage, because they were effective in organizing peaceful protest with clear demands that they want to live in Europe, not with Russia. So this was the background, for example. And it's helped a lot to show that authorities used enormous force with police, beating peaceful people, women, children even, at that time. In, for example, cases like Kazakhstan, where we also collected, and we were the only organization who collected testimonials in Zhanaozen back in 2011, there was a peaceful strike of oil workers in Kazakhstan, in Zhanaozen place, and authorities, after 6 months of this peaceful protest, which actually was supported by Sting at that time, they shoot people. They basically started to shoot people to stop this protest. So I was a student, a PhD student at the time, and I collected testimonials of these people. And this helped for these protesters to be saved. Over 67 people at the time were taken as a hostage or disappeared or detained, and hundreds were killed. So we were able at that time to provide at least home arrest, like change a detention facility to home arrest, and then effectively release these people after some time, placing their names in the resolution of European Parliament and a trade agreement. So EU didn't want to trade with Kazakhstan until, for example, they released political prisoners. The same like in Ukraine. Until Yanukovych released all of these people who were taken as a hostage, Ukraine didn't get any kind of support or didn't receive at that time Yanukovych. No one from EU or US politicians wanted to meet with him. So this is instrument what we use. Or, for example, in case of Moldova, we discussed that Moldova shouldn't receive any money, for example, from EU macro-financial aid until they release all political prisoners. And we know that regime basically stolen this money. They're responsible for corruption. So these conditions were under control of activists and other people who know how to navigate and have more transparency in spending funds domestically. So it gave more power for local community. It gave more transparency mechanism and accountability. This is the most effective. And as a result, Kazakhstan and also Moldova announced me as a threat to national security and also organization. So the same later happened with Poland, which was quite authoritarian. Nevertheless, it was European. It is European country since 2015 until last year in October, when there was the Power, Law and Justice Party. So they were persecuting entrepreneurs, journalists, activists, LGBT rights activists, religious organizations. They were persecuting judges, prosecutors, basically everyone who was against violation of rule of law and who participated in peaceful protests in defense of human rights and rule of law in Poland. And we, again, as Open Dialogue Foundation, were a bridge for international community, for all of those people who persecute. We were the only organization who brought these people first on international platforms. And for this reason, Poland announced me also as a threat to national security. So it was coordinated attack since 2018 of 3 authoritarian regimes going after me. And because I was very experienced already with my team how to defend political prisoners, I was able to resist against all of this attack. The only attack which I was not prepared and I didn't know how to stop, it was financial repression, because those 3 regimes, they were organizing smear campaign against me and organization and all of our donors and volunteers in more than 20 languages. And they were able to get and weaponize my banking data. So they got information from Belgian banks who is donating to our organization and who is receiving funds. And as a result, a lot of our network of activists, for example, in Kazakhstan, they were arrested. They were sentenced for many years, up to 7 years. And we spent years and years to release these people. Some of them were tortured or even killed. So we had very traumatic experience how weaponization of banking data can basically destroy people's life. And I want to underline this was data from Belgian banks and Polish banks, right? So it's in EU. And it shows how easy authoritarian regimes can organize transnational repression with use of bank as a weapon against critics, even if you live abroad and in democracies. And for this reason, for us, Bitcoin became as a freedom tool. So we cannot use exchanges for obvious reasons because they're regulated the same way as banking. So we use only peer-to-peer transactions, self-hosted wallets, and privacy payment instruments like mixers. At least for the moment, they are not accessible for authoritarian regimes. And for this reason, they are useful for us. We heard different opinions, how it's safe, that it's just temporary. Like you basically at some point will be known who and when send you money. But at least for the moment, it helps save life for many activists, and we use it. And for this reason, we also defend these tools, both in US and EU and other G7 countries, educating regulators, explaining them how anti-money laundering counterterrorism regulation is abused by dictators and why it's so important to have remedies and also to keep neutral language towards to freedom technology as peer-to-peer transactions with Bitcoin.
Gosh, it sounds like just the amount of pain and suffering that a lot of people have gone through. Is there anything in particular that they're focused on as far as governments or establishments, regimes that they're looking for, or is it just come down just to freedom of speech?
Basically, it's almost every time people in all these countries, they just want to have normal life, just not to be stolen with their salaries and so on. So they don't want to pay these enormous bribes and to support corruption. So they protest against corruption in their countries. And in our case, we, of course, defend freedom of speech, but we notice one common thing, that after all ability of activists to be protected on a political level in democracies, one thing for the moment no one can fix, and it's financial repression. So, and this is one of the most painful experience, because imagine if you cannot earn any kind of money, if you have no access to rent or buy any property, if you have no right how to get any medical support because you have no means, right? And you financially excluded, you assumed and you classified by state in all of these authoritarian states. And we live in the world where majority of the countries is authoritarian, right? At the extremist or terrorist or money laundering or cyber criminal. This is the most favored politically motivated accusations against everyone who criticizes regime. And for this reason, it's so important to know that anti-money laundering country regulation became enormous power in hand of dictators to prosecute people both domestically but also outside the country. And this is the reason why we advocate and join and collect cases all over the world and present them on international institutions, why Financial Action Task Force has to be reformed and has more transparency with more participation with people from civil society and industry representatives, and why they shouldn't label the only available for the moment tool to resist against financial repressions. It's peer-to-peer Bitcoin transactions and everything related to privacy payment and crowdfunding instruments. And also encryption, of course, because encryption, unfortunately, encrypted messengers, they also, again, as a privacy tool under attack right now.
Is there a particular bank in the EU, or is there specifically like a corporation or anything that's kind of, I don't want to say behind all this, but playing a big part in kind of this financial repression?
You would be surprised. No, it's just every single financial institution, because they all have obligation on anti-money laundering regulation, basically share the data. So we just been in Arnhem and we had a panel with actually amazing panel on Bitcoin conference with Bitcoiners, Financial Intelligence Union from Netherlands, and also a member of European Parliament from Netherlands. And discussion was, are they aware how financial institutions have to share all data with dictators, first of all, and how it can be weaponized, and what remedy they have? I said, yes, of course we know, but how are you going to uncover crimes if police doesn't have access to everyone's, from citizens to financial data, to banking data? And with this question, a little bit shocked me, because it means that we know about it, that bank has policing function, but admitting it in a way that everyone is going to be followed because police has to check if you didn't commit any crime, this is kind of shocking experience, because why activists in authoritarian state not even having 1% of all access to information, what police in democracies have, having all camera, having access to your booking, having access to your flights information, having access to your insurance, driver license, everything, like your search on with IP, right? Police has a lot of instrument right now to police and to find out if someone committed some kind of crimes. Why they should have even more access with our financial data? This is something I think we really have to rethink and to address, because it's overreach of the power. And she was not able to respond for this because she thought that there is no instrument, not enough resources for police to, she as a person from Financial Intelligence Union of Netherlands. So, and for me, it was clear sign that EU, unfortunately, moving to Chinese style society, where everything just under extreme control, and where, with violation of what I saw, for example, in Poland, it's not something theoretical, it's very practical. Their banking system and their anti-money laundering counterterrorism regulation was abused to prosecute everyone, every entrepreneur, every activist, every judge, every prosecutor every journalist, every single person who was against and criticized the government for violation of human rights and rule of law. And this is not a theory, it's a practice. And it can happen next election in every democracy. So what remedies do we have? So far, the only remedy is Bitcoin. But the problem is with Bitcoin that it's because of negative language in a regulation, it can be classified already as a tool for criminals. And this is something what we are strongly against for, because it can affect both developers and users, investors, and every company who develops this or sponsor or working on this kind of project. You cannot develop this kind of freedom instruments in authoritarian states, because by default, you're going to be killed or imprisoned, or your business going to be destroyed. You can operate with this freedom technology only in democracies. No matter how, sometimes I saw these discussions in, for example, Damus on Nostr or in Twitter, that a lot of people, developers, Bitcoiners, say, "Oh, I will migrate from US." Yes, you can, but until time when in authoritarian regimes will understand that you are basically a threat to them. And if in democracies, you may like them or not, you at least have some remedies how to defend your rights. In authoritarian states, you have no remedies. Like literally, there is almost nothing exists to protect our rights. And as a person who defends human rights in political prison for 15 years, I know what I say, and I can prove it on many, many cases, hundreds of cases of those political prisoners whom we released. So in this situation, all banks in democracies, no matter if it's US, UK, Canada, they operate in the same level. So if you're under attack, and if any kind of authoritarian regimes request your data, they will immediately share it by default. If you're under attack with AI smear campaign, they will block your bank account and will terminate your services. And you have no right to appeal. And this is how anti-money laundering regulation right now built. Banks have more rights to refuse you without any explanation and police you based on this regulation right now. So what we try to change, and we thought we kind of succeed in Belgium, we got a special regulation of so-called bank of last resort, when everyone who was deprived the right to have financial services can apply and get this bank account. For example, like in my case, my organization case, and even people who use crypto assets, right? A lot of people were deprived right to have financial services. And you think that banks open for us bank account? No. We even succeed to have a special decree of the government of Belgium demanding from the bank to have for us, to provide us financial services. And bank just refused and said that it's a matter of anti-money laundering counterterrorism regulation. Nothing more. Extremely abstract, and it shows enormous power and lack of accountability for financial institutions for depriving financial services of people, like basically for financial exclusion. So this is something what we addressing all the time and raising this issue right now for the last 2 years. We created a special coalition, Building True Change Coalition, BTC Coalition, and with activists who were experienced and who are leaders from other side communities from all over the world, who speaking on behalf of everyone financially excluded. We defend Bitcoin, and we want and advocate for reform of anti-money laundering counterterrorism regulation. So there is no more this kind of cases. We know it's a hard task, but at the same time, we complete quite significant reform of Interpol. Interpol is police organization, which was abused by dictators and still abused right now. But at least right now you have, thanks to our campaign, remedies. So you can delete yourself if you are politically persecuted and you have ground for this, or you're wrongly placed on this list. You have compensation fund. You have a lot of things which you never had before, and you spent 6 years, for example, being listed forcibly or on list of Interpol. So the same what we've done there, we believe we all together with the public campaign can make changes and both protect Bitcoin from these negative narratives in regulation, but at the same time pushing back against overregulation with anti-money laundering regulation, which right now used as a police tool by regimes, authoritarian regimes against citizens.
Yeah. I think you basically covered that part about the no bank is not quick to remove you from their network. Let's talk about the Bitcoin Coalition. It looks like you have some I guess there are four kind of statements here: combat the AML CFT abuse within the wider range of transactional repression mechanisms, promote financial inclusion in non-democratic and developing countries, promote Bitcoin and stablecoins as a tools for support human rights, and educate on the role of Bitcoin mining. Can you talk about the coalition and the people involved, and more or less how you plan to execute on some of these aims?
Yeah, sure. We, as a coalition, exist almost 2 years right now, and it's basically activists from all over the world. For example, like I know Anna Chikhovich from Russian Navalny Foundation, Jorge Girasati from Venezuela, Ismail Sezgin from Turkey, Roya Mahmoud for Afghanistan, Yaroslav Likhachevsky from Belarus, and many others. So my colleague, of course, Botar Jardi Mali, who is a lawyer, who is also helping me as a colleague, but not only victim of abuses of anti-money laundering counterterrorism regulation, but also as a professional lawyer, Harvard lawyer, to work on legal stuff together with our volunteers. So we conducted so far almost 300 of meetings with regulators of G7 countries. And our main goal was to educate them about Bitcoin, how we use it, Bitcoin and stablecoin, because this is two instruments used by activists. And when we speak about stablecoins, we first of all mean, of course, Tether, because this is the most usable in Ukraine or many other countries for humanitarian aid. And in most cases, what we notice that policymakers have no clue what is it, how we use Bitcoin, why we use Bitcoin, why we use it in general crypto assets. Some of them even ask me, "Can you show me Bitcoin?" So it was, of course, during private meeting, and it's so important. It shows importance why you need to meet with regulators and explain them from the very basic level why and how it works, why it's beneficial both for them as democracies, but also for people who financially excluded in authoritarian states, first of all. And for example, a lot of MPs who support human rights, and we first of all focus on them, they were asking us, okay, I want to support this and these judges who politically persecuted in Turkey, and my bank account was terminated. How can I use Bitcoin? So we explained them immediately during the meeting how he can send and support his family, right? Why it's safe for their family in Turkey, because in Turkey, for example, if you just helping someone who is listed as extremist or terrorist on Erdogan's list, these people all under risk to be arrested or excluded from society, fired from the work, or can be, tortured, disappear, and so on. So it's extremely, extremely dangerous. And same situation actually in many other countries like Belarus, Kazakhstan. We also show, for example, how it's difficult to fundraise in Kazakhstan. It takes 3 to 5 minutes to block bank account if you publish it on social media and try to fundraise, for example, for families of political prisoners, or you're just a candidate to elections and you want to be elected. So if you just fundraise according to the law, you absolutely doing everything according to the law. Even this will be not enough, because authoritarian regimes easily just accuse you of being extremist and you can prove nothing. So the only thing how you can protect you using privacy, payment, and crowdfunding instruments. And this is like open mind for politicians' experience. Then we were talking about abuses, which I mentioned before, that all activists, all dissidents accused being money launderers, extremists, terrorists, and so on. And this we were talking about both in financial action task forces in EU and in US. We were explaining it to FinCEN. We were explaining it in the Senate, in US, in Italian Parliament, in European Parliament, in German Bundestag. Now we go into Norway and to Czech Republic to speak about it. Because all of these governments right now using extremely negative language to our financial freedom instruments. They classify in G7 documents and, of course, accordingly in national and international regulation, peer-to-peer transactions with use of crypto assets as a threat to financial security and integrity. And for us, it means extremely discriminative, negative language. So as a coalition, we already prepared at least 5 submissions to different parliaments and to different governments to defend both peer-to-peer transaction and privacy payment instruments and also Bitcoin mining. In case of peer-to-peer transactions, last year we had significant success. Majority of European Parliament were staying on our position and defended, even recognized that crypto assets can be used as a payment instrument, crowdfunding instrument. There was a lot of provision to defend privacy data, financial data, and so on. Unfortunately, because in EU, we don't have much support. So Bitcoin community and people who support privacy, they were not active. They were not supporting those majority of European Parliament at that time, right after this basically vote. The final anti-money laundering regulation was already excluded our provision. So it shows you very clearly, if you active and if you educate, if you support activists in defense of financial freedom instruments, you have result. If you just inactive and you say fuck politicians, then you have this result, which actually, unfortunately, making harder life for not only developers, Bitcoin community, but also end users of Bitcoin as a financial freedom instrument. So it's extremely was for us disappointing that we were left alone. But at the same time, we see with the hope on American Bitcoin community, which extremely active in defending their rights, in defending Bitcoin mining, in defending privacy payment instrument. Nevertheless, what kind of attack is there? They unite forces almost across the industry and end users. They even help also us to be active on US level, helping us to come to US, because it's also for us, matter of funds to fly to DC and to defend Bitcoin, present our submission to FinCEN. This shows very clear situation. If you unite your force, like for example, right now we get again support from majority of miners in US and just a few, unfortunately, a few miners in EU. We believe that we will be able to defend proof of work and Bitcoin mining also in EU against this development, because right now European Security Market Authority, together with European Commission, they basically develop an extremely negative sustainability indicators with approach to discourage investment in Bitcoin mining. So we want to stop it. And we already see, unfortunately, in European members association countries like Norway or Iceland, that they already discussing in parliaments how to ban Bitcoin mining. And again, next week, we're going together with miners from US and some miners also from Norway to defend Bitcoin mining in front of Norway parliament and government to prevent this kind of negative language, discriminative language, as we believe in Norway. And the same we will do also in Iceland, and also we meet with parliamentarians in Czech Republic. So, and we're doing it activists from all over the world, plus Bitcoin miners. So we go together and we present from one side use cases, why, for example, activists like me in Europe need Bitcoin, why activists in Venezuela need Bitcoin, why activists in Kazakhstan need Bitcoin, and so on, and what actually benefits, what positive externalities can bring Bitcoin mining for you. For example, for EU grid, being stabilization, being actually using this waste from coal industry, producing Bitcoin and cleaning environment, and many, many other things. So a lot of politicians not aware about it. And we as activists, as Bitcoin defenders, explain it on a very precise factual ground. So we collect testimonies, put it in a paper with a special regulatory recommendations and present them in the parliaments.
So let's kind of go through, because I want to get a better, clearer picture of how this would work if, let's just say hypothetically, I'm a journalist in the EU and I'm writing something on, let's just say any war that's going on at the time. And let's say some of the information inside that is key to finding or even saving civilians in a proxy to that war. And let's say after that, shortly after that, my financial, privilege is cut off. What are my options at that point with your foundation, and what necessary steps would need to be taken place to get any kind of support?
So just also to be precise, what we are doing, right? So for example, this kind of journalist can become a part of our network, our coalition, and he can give us testimonials saying that he was financially excluded because of supporting some humanitarian group. We document it like the really legal document, which can be presented in the parliament, governments. We publish it because if it's information not public, it's kind of very hard to move things forwards. And then we do meetings where his case or her case, one of number of cases proving that there is financial exclusion mechanism, absolutely without any remedies, not justified. And this is also discriminative not only for those who donating, but also those who receiving funds, right? Because there is no more support if there is no mechanism how to support. And usually, because it's a humanitarian issue, and it's proven that it's absolutely legal just for like peaceful people and so on, usually governments, they're concerned because at least proclamation from their side that they are pro-human rights, they are pro-rule of law, they are pro-humanitarian support, right? And more you have this kind of cases, more chances to put pressure and achieve more neutral language towards the Bitcoin technology, because we can, of course, and we are going to do that, our advocacy in changing anti-money laundering regulation in the banking system, but we know that it's only possible from one side. So even if we get any kind of changes, it will be only on the side of democracies. But banking should also operate for receiver in authoritarian states or in emergency territory. And this is harder. For example, in Ukraine, at some point, banking was completely paralyzed. Like nothing was going to Ukraine, like nothing. So the only way how to get support or how to send support, it was only with Bitcoin. Luckily, Ukraine was at the time the third place in the world for mass adoption for crypto assets. And for this reason, everyone almost knew how to use Bitcoin and stable coins, Tether. Or if they didn't know, it was easy for me and many others to teach them how to use it, right? So in this case, the same. So one, this journalist is not able to use banking system and not able to provide aid with the traditional financial instruments. Because of participation in our coalition, he would be able to learn how to use financial freedom instruments, first thing. Second, he will be able to join our campaign to defend financial freedom instruments and also to defend traditional protection of financial institutions in democracies. Because again, in authoritarian states, it's just one of kind of weapon in arms of dictators. You can do nothing until they control the power. So you can only impact on things which happening in democracies with the financial institutions. So I try to be also as much as possible precise, so you also not have illusion. But this is how it works.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess my only follow-up to that would be, let's say hypothetically, you are a journalist and you are writing some things that could be considered helpful to the people that you're writing about, but definitely detrimental to you and your state in the world. What is there any? Have you run up into any fear of trying to reach out to some of these human rights foundations because of the risk of getting exposed or the privacy aspects to it? Is there an option for them to go and to sign up, tell their story, but to keep their privacy intact?
For the moment, you have like different kind of instruments. If you want, for example, to support someone and keep your privacy, you can use, and again, we're teaching this kind of people how, especially activists in authoritarian states, or for example, some donors in EU, how they can use BTC Pay server to basically transact in a safe way, right? So they can announce campaigns or they can use BTC Pay server as an instrument of financial freedom. And this is one of the most useful things what right now everyone using. So this is one thing. The obstacle there and the biggest, for example, in Kazakhstan, like you can use BTC Pay server in Russia even, like, but for civil society, I mean, for example, you can fundraise in EU and, for example, find the way how to support locally some activists, right? Because no one from Russia can donate for Russian activists living abroad. And, the prime motivation for Russian activists to operate even from abroad, you need to have funds. Who is going to donate you? Only Russians, right? So this is one. The same with Iranian, the same with Syrian. So everyone who is under sanctions, for them, they need to, from one side, to be privately supported. Second, they need to have instruments safe to distribute. So this is very important too. Second thing, it's about how you go in general, navigate, let's say, communication. So again, we teach people how to use encrypted messengers and how to communicate. The real challenge in authoritarian states, even if you have, for example, like in Kazakhstan or in Belarus, when you even have this kind of instruments like BTC Pay server, it's still challenge how to transact peer-to-peer, because banks and local institutions, law enforcement, and they're going after everyone who is providing these peer-to-peer services. They arrest people who is, like in Nigeria, right? They're going against everyone who is helping, facilitating these peer-to-peer transactions. So this is, I think, the biggest right now challenge against mass adoption, because a lot of people already know in these countries that it's useful too, but how to go from fiat to Bitcoin and back, this is the main challenge. And what for the moment, we don't know how to answer in such country like Kazakhstan or Nigeria or Belarus, because it just costs life for people to help facilitation in peer-to-peer transactions.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest kind of hurdle I see when it comes to a lot of this stuff is the data that's being stored and who has control of it and who's getting access to it. I think that would be my biggest fear as a journalist, reporting on this stuff. Not saying that I don't love what you guys are doing, what everybody else is doing. It's just, if I was put in their shoes, that would be the first thing that I would question, is the data and where it's being stored and who has access to it.
That's why we're using encryption and everything around it. Yeah. But we need to be also precise. For journalists who live in G7 countries, many regimes, because of just their journalists, and normally they have EU citizenship or other G7 countries citizenship, they're more protected. It's not comparing, for example, to me, I'm Ukrainian, right? Or any other activists living with our national passports in G7 countries. We are more, unfortunately, under risk to be transnationally persecuted and less protected than, for example, people just having their normal G7 passports. It's more protection for you. You are not going to be kidnapped easily. You're not going to be affected. I mean, of course, there is always risk, but because you report normally for many countries, and you have more protection, or you live in a safer place, probability that something will happen with you less than, for example, with people like us who are normally the only voices for our communities. So for this reason, we classified as a threat to national security. You would not find many journalists from foreign, like G7 countries, classified as a threat to national security. And maybe, China, Russia is doing it, but not other, like Kazakhstan. You have no journalists classified as a threat to national security, but they have absolutely, no limitation to do so against human rights activists like me, or any kind of voices of business people, any kind of other national representative from Kazakhstan.
Yeah, because I think that's the biggest problem that we have in the States is the three-letter agencies and the will to speak up or speak out. We don't necessarily have I would say like a target on journalists' back or anything like that, but they are aware of the consequences for not going along with the narrative. That's the biggest threat I see here in the States is that kind of going against the establishment, and it's just very reminiscent of 1984 and a lot of stuff like that. What's your experience dealing with journalists here in America, as far as on the foundation side?
It's hard to say. We just basically were in touch with a few journalists on digital assets in the last time. Previously, we were always in contact with regard of support for Ukraine, or we tried to raise awareness about how basically third countries using national banks as the tool to circumvent sanctions or even to lift sanctions. For example, like Kazakhstan, they lift sanctions from 3 Russian banks in Kazakhstan. In US, and we try to bring attention about this. Unfortunately, not much success about it at that time, but lately through you, we were able to raise more awareness about it. So it's hard. I agree with you. It's everything about political priorities. So it's hard. It's not easy to bring attention for very difficult human rights and rule of law issues.
Yeah, this is where I see just here in my community, it's much better to get involved with your whatever, if it's your church or other small local communities. I tend to see here in America, those have far more impact for changing the course of history than, at least in your town, than trying to do it at a more of a world scale. Yeah, that's at least
we have no choice, because, for example, if I want to support Ukraine, I need to actually gather support and bring voices of people from global South countries or from Europe and from US and Canada. Because at the end of the day, the war against Ukraine is a very global issue. And Russia is able to get more support because of, basically diplomatic and solution incompatibility, I would say, not ability to promote any kind of solution of EU. At the same time, no political will, no clear vision. So as you see, China and Russia gain more and more support in African countries, in Latin American countries, and we're disappointed because of this. So as civil society, what we try to do, we try to unite our forces with other activists, not like you government, they support dictators. So we don't want it. We think that it's a huge mistake, and we're quite clear about it. And this is our approach. So we believe that in the current situation, you cannot just locally solve issues. And this is the reason why, for example, we defend, again, Bitcoin on a global way, basically on G7 countries, because it's under attack as a financial freedom tool on a global way. So if you fix it in one country, under pressure, like we fixed it in European Parliament last year, a majority supported us. But because there was huge pressure also from different countries, G7 countries on EU, in the end, they basically follow the following narratives. And we need to be active as a community in defense of our freedom tools or any kind of freedoms, and understand that it's a global issue. You cannot just solve it in one country.
Yeah, that's always that's always the tricky part, right? Is no matter the amount of work that you've done, let's say a year or 2 years prior, new people come in, new incumbents, whoever it is, power shifts beneath you or whatever, and people forget like what it was that you did in that country or in that area. What's one way to combat that other than just being more loud and active?
Just you need to understand why you're doing it. Because, for example, what I'm doing, I understand that I'm not really looking for gratitude. I know that if I'm not defending Bitcoin, if I'm not even have almost no donations, and if I not activate my contacts to go to Norway next week, no one is going to do it. And probably Bitcoin mining is going to be banned. What does it mean for me? Lose my last resort instrument. So I believe that what I can do in this situation, mobilize and try to find people with all my capacity who will at least share my views and help me to unite forces to stop this. And I'm not expecting that someone is going to say me thank you, because I'm doing it first of all for myself. Because if I lose it, it means my person who is dependent on my knowledge and support will lose it. It means that hundreds of activists who sit in prisons will have no support. It means like 10,000 of activists of our network in Central Asia, they will lose ability to use financial freedom instruments. It means that other countries who are part of our coalition will be in the same position. And for this reason, we're doing it no matter what, right? Of course, we want to have support. Of course, we want to be somehow kind of, shared views and be more effective at the end, right? But we need to understand priorities, and that first of all, it's needs for every one of us. And for this reason, we will continue this work no matter what until we're able to do so. And for this reason, I was doing the same human rights work for years. I established foundation because I truly believe that everyone has to participate in defense of human rights in this or in another way. If you can do contribution professionally like I do, it's one thing. And you risk your life, family, and so on. It's kind of risk, but you have to be kind of aware about it. It's your decision, right? Someone is jumping from the mountain, someone is doing diving. It's also risk, right? Even riding on a high speed, it's also a risk. So everyone has its own risk in our life. We just count the reasoning why we're ready to risk our life. If you don't able to risk, you can support financially, you can support with your knowledge, you can support with your technology knowledge, you can invent something, right? And this is what everyone can contribute to make this world safer, comfortable to live, because at the end of the day, we want to have also time with a safe environment where we feel comfortable, where we and our children, our relatives, friends can develop and operate freely, right? And to do so, you need to contribute. It's not that someone is going to solve it for you, This is my belief. And for this reason, I think the only answer on your question, it has to be your awareness and your decision, how you're going to contribute, how you're going to build this network, how you're going to build this coalition of people who are ready to basically do proof of work, not just saying, not just claiming something,
Yeah, that's so inspiring. Gosh. Yeah. It's a good way to put it. Do it for you. Screw everybody else. What does your family say? Are they proud of what you've been able to accomplish?
Yeah, my family was also affected with this weaponization of banking data. My brother supported me, and he's also a Bitcoiner. By the way, this is how I learned first from Bitcoin. I think, it's of course difficult. It's difficult was for us to be under attack. It was difficult to be on this smear campaign. But the most important that we are all together and we overcoming it, and we got support from people we never would expect, because in this situation, it really counts humanity. And this is why I'm truly believing in this human support with, awareness that you change in this world. And I think Satoshi Nakamoto actually was even more than aware about it, because he saw this transnational repression and abuse of financial instrument long before. This is why he or its group of people, we don't know, she invented this important tool. But at the end of the day, if we don't protect developers, if we don't protect Bitcoin miners, if we don't protect investors and companies working on Bitcoin from negative regulatory language in G7 countries, it would cost for us losing this tool or losing the scale of this. I know that Bitcoin doesn't need us, but we all need Bitcoin. We don't have other financial instruments. Maybe you guys have it as a privileged guys, but I mean, majority of people in the world, they need Bitcoin if they already aware and they have limited capacity sometimes to use it because of different kind of lack of instrumental security issues, like, for example, peer-to-peer transactions, how to make them secure in such country like Kazakhstan or Iran or Belarus, or, for example, Nigeria, right? Or, for example, so we are not yet there, right, to provide the security for peer-to-peer. Or it can be risk for other industry representatives just because some people, unfortunately, I have to mention their samurai case, they not really smartly enough articulated something which makes easy attack against all developers for privacy payment instruments. We have to be smart enough not to allow these kind of attacks. We have to be smart enough to protect Bitcoin miners and developers and end users and everyone who is building this important freedom financial tool.
I agree. It's well said. I think we're coming up at the top of the hour, but I just want to just kind of run through just three rapid fire questions. Mm-hmm. First question: What's your wallet of choice? What do you find that you tend to offer to tell people to download on their phones or on their computers?
I think now all Bitcoiners will say, "Oh my God, how dare you to use this?" So we use Moon Wallet because it's the simplest one. I know that a lot of people would say, "Oh my God, it sometimes doesn't work, it this and that." Yeah, but it has the easiest interface. Then we used to have, and we, as an option, we also use Phoenix because also it's super easy. This is, I would say, the easiest to priority things. And also we use wallet of Telegram because it's so popular in many countries and it's way easier to operate because of chat and peer-to-peer trade platforms, chats. So this is basically three things right now which work in practice.
Yeah, there's a funny joke we have around town where it's like, since 2021, we're still recommending Moon Wallet. 3 years later, yeah.
But I know. Every time I say it, a lot of Bitcoin. Oh
it
my
works.
God! It just works,
Yeah.
And you need to understand that people in many countries they have no language issue. So for them, it should be very easy. Put here, and this is send, and this is received. That's it.
Yeah. What do you do outside of work? Like, what do you read? Do you go on walks? What kind of grounds you? What gets you back to center?
I like sport very much. Everything around sport. Neurology also, and I like, of course, swimming. I like reading everything around, again, politics, again, history, privacy. So my life actually right now, because I had so many attacks, I was concentrated on work. But in normal life, I'm doing a lot of sports. I spend time with my relatives and friends. And dreaming about future, thinking how it should be.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
And then the final question is, what's a good book that you recommend that kind of got you down this path to wanting to change the world?
I'm going to write it,
Oh, yeah. Okay, that works too. What is it going to be called?
Yes. I was doing PhD and my professor said, Lyudmyla, you have two options. You can actually write something about, using someone's ideas already existing, or you can write a book based on your experience and experienced people whom you help. And this was momentum when I was doubting, should I run foundation? Should I establish foundation? Because I was at that time acting as activist back in 2009. And I said, okay, I'm going to start foundation. So after 15 years of managing foundation, establishing it, and releasing hundreds of political prisoners, completing a reform of Interpol, Schengen information system. Right now, my biggest ambition to reform anti-money laundering in countries regulation and protect and advocate for Bitcoin as a freedom instrument and also any kind of privacy, payment and communication instruments. I think it should be an interesting book. Otherwise, at least 3 authoritarian regimes were going after me. They recognize my work, and I resisted and successfully teach others how to actually resist against these attacks.
Yeah, I'll read that book. It sounds amazing. Gosh. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for coming on the show and explaining your work and God bless you. And I hope everything works out the way you want it. And where can people learn more about the foundation?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me and having me. And thank you guys, everyone from Bitcoin community who is supporting and helping us to have this freedom, financial freedom tool. This is really important. You guys have no idea how it's important and how it saves lives.
Where can people go and donate and learn more?
We use BTC Pay server. Okay. The same what we teach others. You just go on our the Foundation EU website and basically you can click on Bitcoin and you will see this option how you can donate to us.
All right. So for people at home, it's en.odfoundation.eu. And has all the information there. And then you can donate Bitcoin and even fiat. So.
Yes. We fight for our right.
That's awesome.
So we have a bank account, at least in one country, in Belgium. Oh, sorry, in Poland, not yet in Belgium, but it's going to be in Belgium. Yeah.